All right, folks. The time has come at last. Welcome to not just another edition of Heavy Hands, but the... Oh, God. Phil, is it the fifth annual? How many years have we done these?
Oh, I don't know. Like, together?
Yeah, let's just...
I'm gonna say 4.
Okay, the fourth annual Handies. Yes, hello, and welcome to the 2021 Handies. I'm in a COVID house now, folks. So this is not just the last episode of the year, but probably the last episode of the show. Unless, Phil, do you think you'll carry on when I'm gone?
Oh, sorry. I was just drinking and doing other stuff.
He's concerned.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm really sorry to see you're gonna die, Connor.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, don't concern yourself about that.
Oh, okay.
Just, do the best you can. And, make sure there's nothing to stop me from taking over and gutting the IP.
All right, now I may have installed several potential successors and fail-safe options in the case of my untimely demise. So, obviously, Ryan Wagner, formerly of the fight site, he's taking over. Are you going to be happy being the sort of vizier to Ryan Wagner?
No,
you know what?
I feel
it's Ed
like
Gallo.
He would be too mean.
Yeah, no, it's got to be Ed. What am I talking about, Ryan? Ryan's a dick. Ed is like the sweetest guy on earth. It's Ed. So congratulations, Ed Gallo. Rest in peace, me. And let's make it a good one since it's the last run, right?
Are you sure you don't want to elect a successor who might make you? You just want to have a successor who makes you look better.
Ooh, okay, it's you then.
Surely you want people to look back on you and think.
Yeah, you can have it then.
Remember you fondly.
Uh-huh. Congratulations, Phil. All right. Now, we have quite a slate of awards to hand out this year, as we always do. We've scrapped some, we've gained some new ones. Sincere apologies to any people who made suggestions and whose names and or Twitter handles have not been attached to those. I think I got the ones that we just added. A couple of new ones also that came out of the incredible brains of Messrs. Connor Rebush and Phil McKenzie. And by the way, that's who's talking. I'm Connor, that's Phil. Welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I think I did sort of that. So we have 3 broad categories here for our awards. Of course, as usual, as is the new tradition anyway, we start with the generic boring awards. Fighter of the Year, KO of the Year, the stuff that everyone does. Then we move on to a category which Phil has, insightfully named Weird Stuff, because we don't know how to categorize it. And finally, following the pretense that this is still some sort of like analysis podcast, the strategy section where, most of those are stupid too. I
like to think that we've got a whole, Goldilocks and the Three Bears kind of thing going on. As you'd come to the porridge of the first section and you'd be like, this porridge is too bland. And you'd come to the porridge of the second section, you'd be like, this porridge is too stupid. And maybe that third section, maybe for many people, that third section will be just right. But honestly, I expect that the second section will be everyone's favorite.
Yeah. Can't wait for that hot bowl of steaming stupid. Well, let's start off then with the generic boring awards. We're going to also do a couple of these differently than we have in the past. Instead of the whole, fake Oscars thing where we read out all the nominees and then select a winner. For quite a few of these categories, in fact, there is just an obvious shoo-in. So when that is the case, we are not going to discuss it beforehand. We're just going to name who wins the award. And then we are going to, name our sort of honorable mentions, the runner-up nominees. And then a couple of the other awards, are, I think, real pick'ems. We have not decided who wins, so we are gonna have to discuss those to come to a conclusion. Is there any other ado to get to before we just jump into the generic boring awards, Phil?
Not that I can think of.
Great. Well,
just make this go!
Welcome to the generic boring section of the Handies. The first handy to hand out Fighter of the Year. And it's Chucky Olives. Right? It has to be. He not only has he won the title after like one of the longest, craziest action fighter UFC careers probably of any person who's gone on to be a champion. Like a real Robbie Lawler sort of career before getting there. He has continued to be an insane action fighter who almost loses every time in his title fights. He's also just like, seems like a cool, charming guy. He beat Dustin Poirier and then he like went and bought some of his hot sauce. What a guy. Fighter of the Year.
He's great.
Yeah. Who doesn't like him? Who are our honorable mentions for Fighter of the Year, Phil?
There's Sergio Pettis, who obviously had like a great and surprising upset win over Kyoji Horiguchi over in Bellator.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Kamaru Usman, who's seems to be everyone's like alternate pick for the Fighter of the Year award, but I don't really see it.
Yeah.
Like, Jorge Masvidal again, Colby Covington again.
Yeah.
And, Gilbert Burns, sure.
And also Colby Covington like worse than the first time.
Yeah. Colby Covington worse than the first time. Masvidal better than the second time, but neither of them did anything to deserve those title shots again.
No.
If he fights those same guys again next year, do we just give them to get a Fighter of the Year award again?
I think at that point he may have come around to deserving it. Because that is truly a new like level in career management. Like I know I can beat these dudes. There's no one else. No movement happens in the welterweight division. It's a frozen planet. All tectonic activity has ceased. So let's just keep fighting these dudes. Then I think
Covington for the legitimacy of beating the second best welterweight in the world. Then Jorge Masvidal for the smart money fight, just over and over again.
Over and over and
no
over.
rationale needed for why Colby Covington is in fact the second best welterweight in the world.
No, it's fine. We all agree. Great. All right. On to our next category. Phil, I will let you do the honors.
Knockout of the Year. And no, again, this is one where I think everyone really knows what it is.
I just saw that you picked a shoe-in for this.
Yeah. Everyone knows what it is. It's obviously Nate Diaz's brutal destruction of Leon Edwards.
What an incredible... how many layers to this joke are there? Are we saying it's a come from behind victory, or are we pretending he was winning the whole time?
Can't even remember it at this point. Okay, I mean, realistically, okay, fine. It's Super Bowl over Petrosian.
This is the rare occasion where we jump outside of MMA. No knockout was more shocking or horribly violent. Like, he probably ruined one of the greatest kickboxers of all time's career. And
there was some horrific KOs that we saw. I mean, Sandhagen, Edgar, obviously, but those were sort of things we'd seen happen before.
Yeah,
to Edgar, and it wasn't peak of the sport type stuff like this. This was wrapped up, as you said, horrifying violence and meaning and like aesthetics.
Incredible technique. What a setup! A high kick, from close range as Petrosian is exiting range. It had the whole impact and then like fall that seems to take 30 seconds. It had all the aesthetics you want from a really, really devastating and memorable KO. The only other one we didn't mention, I guess we didn't put him in here, but Sergio Pettis probably. I mean, I know you also proposed that for worst KO of the year because it was sort of crushing for Horiguchi fans, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
And then I'm going to shout out
it
one.
It didn't really look super cool, though. I gotta be honest. Like,
you don't think so?
I didn't really think it. Like, as far as spinning back fist KOs, I didn't find it like very aesthetically pleasing.
I don't know. It has a sort of dance-like choreographed quality to it that I usually look for. I liked it. There was also that Ignacio Bahamondes wheel kick over Roosevelt Roberts. That was pretty cool. And then a contender that I just have to mention, I think everyone's forgotten about it, but when it happened, I was like, oh, this is KO of the year. Which obviously don't ever take anything I say in any single moment seriously. But in Invicta, Emily Ducote knocked out Danielle Taylor. And first of all, I've scouted Emily Ducote before. She is a fighter who has rapidly improved and I think has a lot of potential. And also, just on pure aesthetics, it is like that time stands still kind of knockout. So if you haven't seen that one and you want to see a really blistering right hand with a remarkably slow collapse from the losing fighter, make sure to check out Emily Ducote's knockout over Danielle Taylor.
Also, everyone's favorite knockout this year was McGregor Poirier.
Oh yeah,
first one. That was that. I mean, like,
the first one. Yeah. No, actually, yes.
It's not the prettiest, but it's definitely the one that had the most of you shouting and jumping up and down in happiness.
And it's fairly pretty. The little shifting,
it's still very nice.
The shifting right uppercut for the final blow is pretty awesome.
I can think of few, like, there was no knockout this year that made me happier.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. All right, on to a category for which I think we are especially qualified. Submission of the year. We should have like Ben Cohn or like Tom Grant or someone or Tom Elliott or someone like Colin just for a specific advisement on this segment. There were three that jumped to mind. I think we didn't highlight a shoe-in, but I think there is a shoe-in. I think it's Andre Muniz snapping Jacare Souza's arm. That was crazy. And a super slick, way to enter into the position and a particularly brutal finish to the submission, not to mention the fact it was Jacare. Granted, I think we all agree now, a very old, and finally completely past it Jacare, but it stands on its own. And runners up, Randy Brown got a one-arm submission to Cowboy Oliveira, one-arm rear naked choke. That was pretty cool. And a pretty recent one. This one, I think I had to add mostly because this was one of those fights where I called mostly incorrectly, but also one very specific thing that I pointed out just happened to be instrumental to the finish. That was Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy, with the incredible come from behind rear naked choke on Sung Woo Choi, which was just pretty awesome.
It was a weird year this year. What about Antonio McKee getting a standing guillotine? Pitbull as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is good. I like on the Handies when we're like, oh yeah, we didn't think of.
This really.
We did
because there were a bunch of like submission wins in title fights, but a lot of them were not like. A lot of them didn't look that great.
Yeah,
a lot of them were like just sort of rear naked chokes.
Mm-hmm.
Poirier Oliveira or over Glover Blachowicz or Enya Nunez.
Mm-hmm.
So like they sort of disqualify themselves. I think that one is an upset, but it's also like a super cool sub.
Yeah. There was also I think we had
two guillotines.
We had two knee bars in the UFC this year. Ariane Lipske and Claudio Puelles deserves a mention. And this one I wanted to add, but it was not technically a submission. Paul Craig over Jamal Hill. Super cool triangle armbar where he absolutely broke Jamal Hill's arm. And then, it was actually that there was no tap. He elbowed him to pieces from that position and forced the referee to step in. Referee didn't seem to notice that Jamal Hill's arm was pointing the wrong way. So, but it's got to be Andre Muniz. Jiu-jitsu is real, but only for middleweights. All right, next category, Phil. This one I think we have a shoe in, but there will still be a lot of discussion to have around the many, many runners-up, which normally might mean just a really fiery year. But I tend to agree with friend of the show, Kyle McLaughlin, when he says that this really wasn't a year with a lot of truly standout fight of the year candidates. Like, honestly, until this shoe-in pick happened, it was a real sort of free-for-all, and not in the way you necessarily want it to be, which again isn't to say that any of these are bad fights by any means. But
it was like that, like there was a year where everyone was torn about whether it was going to be Matt Brown or Cub Swanson as fighter of the year or something, And just like, oh yeah, I love Matt Brown, I love Cub Swanson. But you were the nominees because no one had like some insane, Hawes winning the title and defending 3 times kind of run. But yeah, and there's tons of like really good, interesting fights this year. Some of them were, in some ways it's because we get spoiled.
Yes.
Some of these, some of these fights would win fight of the year in is a long time, a long time back.
Oh my
Some
God.
of them are still like, I think Jan Sandhagen in particular is like an example of one which is just an incredibly high level fight.
Yeah,
it's very hard to find anything that's as good as that.
You wouldn't
from a purely technical perspective.
Dream of a fight that technical and exciting at once 15 years ago in this sport. Yeah, we're definitely spoiled.
Totally impossible.
So, and in fact, on that note, I have one to name that we didn't even put on the list right after you name our shoe-in pick for fight of the year, which is...
Oh, the shoe-in. Sorry, I thought you were going to name one. Yes, the shoe-in pick. It's got to be Chandler Gaethje.
It's that.
It's not without its flaws. It is primarily one incredible round.
Sure.
And then 2 rounds of just sort of being on the edge of your seat that it might turn into being round 1, but also just being amazingly impressed with Michael Chandler's toughness.
Mm-hmm.
But just in terms of the, like, this is the fight that will viscerally grab you.
Yes.
That you can show to people that have never seen the sport before. Just be like, oh yeah, now I get it, kind of thing. It's this one. Come on, there isn't really there isn't a fight like that on this list.
Yeah, and also a rare example, I think, in MMA of a fight 100% living up to expectations.
Yeah, arguably exceeded
right.
in some ways.
Yeah, all I was expecting.
I just would have expected Chandler to fall apart if that had been happening.
Exactly. Yeah, exceeding expectations, and that is rare for a fight that was that hotly anticipated. On the subject of us like being spoiled, on that very card, there was right after Chandler Gaethje, Shane Burgos, Billy Quarantillo was an incredibly good fight, and even the live audience just like couldn't really get up for it because they were tired from Chandler Gaethje, which is an experience I remember having watching Daniel Cormier, Josh Barnett, which is a very good fight. One of those super competitive bouts where the lopsided scorecards do not tell the story. And that happened right after Thompson Melendez 3.
Yeah.
Which was just too exciting to feel anything that soon afterward. Okay, so we do run through some of our many runners up and sort of get into what makes a great fight. Because to me, it's Jan Sandhagen has to be on here. It's an incredibly high level fight. It's super rewatchable. Again, if it was 15 years ago, you wouldn't dream that MMA could be contested at such a high level between two fighters so well matched. But it does not have the key ingredient in my mind of great fights, which is drama. You need twists and turns. You need dramatic momentum swings to have a truly great fight. And as amazing as it is, as a performance from both guys, it is ultimately, it sort of resolves itself about a third of the way through into the fight it's gonna be for the rest of the time. And it just keeps cooking, but it doesn't really take you anywhere different after the realization hits that, Petr Yan has now figured out Corey Sandhagen. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, you felt like either of them were really, like, I think one of the great things about a great fight is that you want to feel like they've given everything that they had to offer. And I think it ended up being a sort of intellectual battle.
Yes.
Where, as you said, like, Sandhagen couldn't solve Jan.
Yeah.
So he wasn't willing to like go nuts. He was thinking, he was kind of trying to find a way. He couldn't figure out what it was. So he kept just sort of being one step behind the whole time. I think, this is sort of why we kept, Konovsky, Holloway, I think, why we didn't have that quite controversially, even though it was an obviously far more technical fight as our fight of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, I felt like, as far as both of those guys go, I don't think we saw them push to their limit.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these fights are more like, less like a great film, like a really emotionally transcendent experience, and more like a great documentary. Like, wow, that was fascinating. I learned a lot. Okay. What else do we have here? I see that you added Peña Nunes. Is that
again, apart from McGregor, Poirier, I don't know if a fight gave me more joy this year.
Okay, I think that qualifies it for a different category in which it is a shoe-in pick. Another one that was, Font Aldo, that really was a great fight.
Absolutely tremendous.
Yeah, lots of momentum shifts, sort of in two different kinds of momentum. Rob Font, just sort of like holding on to having a good performance, and then Aldo would create a sudden shift that happened multiple times. Volkanovski Ortega, that comes the closest, I think. Although I think it's a little too much Volkanovski just having his own way, but the moments Ortega has really do elevate it. TJ Sandhagen here, and that to me is in the same category as another one we didn't mention, which was also great. Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez.
Yes.
Which are just
that absolutely should be in there, yeah.
Gruesome shows of persistence, right? That are like brutal, borderline uncomfortable fights to watch. But you can't look away. What else? Any of these other runners up stand out to you?
Physique Green, I think, is the one that I'd really want to shout out.
That might be my personal favorite of the year.
Yeah. Even though, once again, I must point out, I had forgotten it.
I had forgotten it.
It wasn't in this list.
To be fair,
I had to add it in.
I kind of forgot the whole year. So, no.
The COVID.
It's no, yeah, it's my brain. It's the brain fog. It's ceased functioning.
Yeah, that might be one of my. I definitely feel very fondly about that one as well. Yeah. It has a lot of has drama. It has what we all love, which is an old gritty vet.
Yes, it's a highlighting performance for defense, which we don't get many of in MMA.
Two different kinds of defense.
Mm-hmm. It's got a real sort of like Pyrrhic tragedy element for Bobby Green coming just this close to winning. Also, like that's one that definitely benefited from the return of live audiences in 2021. Because the New York crowd was going absolutely bananas when Bobby Green was putting it on Fiziev in round 3. That really took it to a new level. It was just a very exciting live experience. Couple of hidden undercard fights. Mason Jones, Mike Davis. I had completely forgotten this fight until I watched it while doing vivisection research for Jones's fight with David Onama, who, if by the way we had like a holy shit, that prospect surprised me performance of the year, that guy would be in there. Jones Davis is an incredibly violent undercard fight. Likewise, I had to put this one on here just because I told everyone it was going to be good, and then it was my boy Gregory Hobocop Rodriguez versus the Iron Turtle Jun Young Park. Momentum shifts, violence, grappling, striking, violent finish, uppercut knockouts, always among my favorites. That was a good fight. Reyes Prochazka, disgustingly violent.
Oh, yes.
Riddell Dober, again, sort of kind of becomes the fight it's going to be at a certain point, but it's still very choppy and has some big swings.
Honest Grant, I mean, again, it's so pronounced in the one-way traffic.
Yeah.
It's just like just a 10-8 slaughtering, and then suddenly it's just a 10-8 slaughtering and a finish.
Yeah. You could also put, speaking of Adrian Yanez Costa happened this year versus Randy Costa, and that just had one momentum shift, but holy shit, was it violent?
Oh, sorry, that was the one I was getting mixed up with. Yeah, what am I saying? Yes, Yanez Grant is very different, but
Yanez Grant
was tremendous.
Tough guy, just wouldn't go away.
Yeah.
And made it really hard on the guy who seemed to have every advantage technically. So, a lot of ones for that. It's kind of weird to look at how many great fights there were and be like, oh, it was underwhelming. But
I don't think that's the case. I mean, it's just a like, because the amount of times when we were just like, this was a sensational card, or this was a sensational run of cards was like not insignificant. I mean, just having, it's like if it's like looking at an album or something, right? And it might not have all your 10 out of 10s on it. If you just have an album just like filled with 8.5 out of 10 songs, like that's still a pretty damn good album.
Yeah. Every single song is great to listen to. You want to listen to it again. They all flow together nicely. Yeah. That's kind of 2021 in the UFC, I think. Oh, and Costa Vittori. That was pretty awesome, but we're going to mention that again later. All right. That's it. I think that might be the quickest we've ever run through the generic boring awards, and thank God.
I think we should continue to try and do it faster every year, because people can find out about those awards anywhere.
Yes, everybody does those. And I think, now that I reconsider it, we should retroactively decide that, in fact, it is Nate Diaz over Leon Edwards for KO of the year.
Okay, sorry, Super Bowl.
On to weird stuff. A category utterly indefinable. And Phil, I'm going to let you take the first reading. This one, I think, is a pick'em category, so we're going to have to go through the nominees one by one.
Okay, this is the Fight Like This Person Award for Good Process and Technique via Andrew Pearson from MMA Mania, aka at Vorpality. Mm-hmm. And the nominees are Chris Curtis teaches Brendan Allen how to cook ribs. Marcin Prachnio, of all people. Dan Ige keeps losing despite making very smart adjustments, and that reminds me to add him into another category later. Mm-hmm. TJ Brown scrapes out a win against superior athlete Kai Kamaka. Gregory Rodriguez does the boxing and wrestling real good. Al Muhammad does game plans, and Karol Rosa is good at fighting.
I mean, yeah. I think this was, in fact, a year. Also, I don't think I even put Jared Gordon really impressed me this year. Bilal Muhammad teammate who suddenly became like a way more technical and process-driven fighter. This was a good year for watching people like dramatically improve.
It's a very journeyman-y category, I feel.
Uh-huh.
Because often we have picked people who are on the more athletic side for this kind of thing, and I think we're coming to the agreement that that's unfair.
Yeah.
As such, goodbye, Gregory Rodriguez. Get out of here.
Well, he may be a great athlete.
I hit Gregory Rodriguez.
He gets tired real fast. Doesn't that count?
No! Look at him. He gets tired.
He's just buff. He's not that fast. He's not that durable. He gets hurt every fight, you know. He's come on.
He's an ex-gym guy, Conor.
Yeah, I know. He's probably on 8,000 experimental steroids. Yeah.
He's on, I don't know if you've ever seen the Kung Fu film, Shaolin Soccer. But he's on whatever they gave the evil team in that.
I have seen that film, yes. All right.
I believe we're called Team Evil. Or something along those lines. But, so this is an interesting one. Yeah, I'm not sure who to go for. Because in some ways this is also it's also a stealthy most improved category, isn't it?
Certainly with guys like Marcin Prachnio. I mean, he stands out not because he necessarily has the best process, but he is the guy who made Sam Alvey knock him out. And then this year...
The lowest of bars.
The lowest of bars. And then this year he, beat Ike Villanueva just sort of soundly. That's not that impressive, but his win over Khalil Roundtree is still very impressive. That is if you're gonna just like insist that Sam Alvey KO you until it finally happens, and then you go in there and you kind of just maintain distance and keep your feet moving and, pick Khalil Roundtree apart, that I was very, very impressed. That he's definitely, if we had a straight up most improved category, Marcin Prachnio would have to be in there. I have really liked Karol Rosa this year. I think being an inveterate know-it-all, having insisted to both you and Zane, I think before she sort of broke through that she was really good and she was going to be really successful, that one just feels, it strokes my ego, which honestly I deserve because I am dying. But also she beat up Betch Correia, which I kind of resent her for that. It's not her fault, but
I'm glad to hear you say that, yes.
That was, you didn't have to do that. Can you really be the fight like this person if you're going to, and also like if you're going to be the fight like this person award winner, you should have knocked out Betch, frankly. Why did you make her suffer for 3 rounds? So.
Yeah. I don't know whether she was taking it easy on her or whether she was just trying not to lose to the slightly large lady who is on her way out of the UFC. But yeah, that is definitely true. In terms of other people, like Matthias Gamrot and Jack Shaw, both people that I think have been like, I think Matthias Gamrot, Jack Shaw, and actually Islam Makachev.
Oh, yes.
I think these are all like surprising kind of return, not necessarily surprising, but these are kind of a return of the GSP archetype. They're obviously a bit on higher, all higher on the athleticism spectrum than the guys we've mentioned already. This is obviously like still a very coherent and dangerous way of fighting. And it's actually like, it's nice to see it make a comeback.
I agree.
Because like, as I said, is very effective. The idea that people can just be shut out of. We certainly myself I've overly stressed the idea that like people are going to turn more towards striking because wrestling is hard and not necessarily as rewarding as hitting people, but that just hasn't been really been the case in recent years. And I think it's been like the resurgence of like ESP kind of archetypes has been kind of awesome to see.
Yeah, a lot of these are fighters who have adapted to. I mean, it may just be a thing that going forward in MMA, that we see this sort of pendulum swing where these grapplers are like, in the same way I used to talk about Demetrius Johnson, like countering the flyweight scrambling meta with his like lockdown positional grappling. These guys, games like Khabib, who's sort of like the one great, first example of this modern grappling meta game. I think they find success because most MMA fighters now are doing what you thought they would do, leaning into the striking and really just treating the ground as like, unless you're in a great position, get up as quickly as possible. And most of the time that works. And these guys know you're going to try to get up as quickly as possible. And they have a litany of positions and chains to run you through to take advantage of those instinctive reactions. That will then just result in you, again, like you said, in a GSP-like fashion, being shut out of the fight altogether. Also on that note, and I think he gets bonus points for being a light heavyweight, Magomed Ankalaev is another really sharp, consistent technical fighter.
Who's the featherweight grappler?
Bryce Mitchell?
There is Bryce Mitchell.
I would have named him, but I just learned out when I looked him up because I think he's going to be a contender for a while. He didn't fight at all this year.
All right, who's that?
Bryce Mitchell. He didn't fight once in 2021.
No, God, what's the guy I'm thinking of? He's also like a big jab heavy, featherweight. A lot of like bit closer to Rory than he is to GSP.
Movsarevloev?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good pick.
But yeah, I mean, I think both featherweight and lightweight have been colonized by strikers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be very interesting over the next couple of years to see what happens when like the next generation of wrestlers really starts hitting.
Mm-hmm. So who wins?
Martin Prachnio.
Just from most improved?
Yeah, no, it's him. Like anyone who gets a serious nomination in Laugh Out Loud Fighter of the Year, automatically just gets like 50 bonus points if they get into any other category ever.
I tend to agree. It's an inspirational pick for all young and like floundering fighters out there that like don't give up, don't drop weight classes. You can get better. All right.
See Sam Alvey as an unclimbable technical wall.
No.
I can be better than this guy.
In fact, you should feel so bad about that, as I suspect Marcin did, that you then become competent at MMA. Yeah. Marcin Prachnio. Nobody would have seen that pick coming, but I'm here for it. I co-sign that. All right. Onto a category we actually had a hard time remembering, a hard time coming up with nominees for, mostly because most of the fights in this category were just completely unmemorable. And that is, as suggested to us, I think somehow only just last year by @SeniorBigBelly, worst fight. There is a shoe-in. It was phenomenally bad. It was Santos Walker. Johnny Walker, Thiago Santos. If what defines a great fight, Phil, is dramatic shifts in momentum and unpredictability, then surely its very antithesis is a fight in which nothing happens and nothing about that seems to change at all.
I mean, it's also the worst fights are also the disappointments.
Yes.
The ones where
that too.
Like, oh, something crazy should happen in this one.
Yes.
This is the Adesanya the Adesanya Romeros of the world.
Oh,
like,
God, yes.
Where you're like, oh, look at the highlight reel of Santos and Walker. This is going to be incredible. And then you get just an absolutely dreadful staring match. Unfortunately, yeah, I think one which I said was going to happen. Because Santos hasn't really led at all for like a really long time.
Mm-hmm. And what was the other side of that Johnny Walker had gone to SBG?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that, like, if someone doesn't lead and you're much bigger than them, there's a really easy way to have at least not a like surefire win. That's an easy way to pull out a ugly fight that you might be able to pull out a decision on. This is what people did against Deoto Machida, that they would just, Henderson and Davis and so on. They would just have these awful fights where they would just, they would chip away at him and then he would land a couple of body kicks or whatever. Mm-hmm. And because he was unwilling to lead, they could just sort of have a fence titration where everything got neutralized. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was just too obvious as a game plan against Thiago. Like, if Johnny Walker couldn't beat him any other way, so it had to be like this. This was his only way, his only chance of winning, and God, was it awful.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, and just the final piece of evidence why that's such a shoe-in. I'm thinking about it right now. We've just talked about it for 2 or 3 minutes. I can't remember who won.
Thiago did.
Okay. I believe you, because I don't know.
Yeah, he started coming forward towards the end of the fight.
That's right.
And then Johnny Walker was like, oh, I don't really know how to do anything.
I guess I should have remembered that because everyone was more mad at Johnny Walker. Okay. Runners up, honorable mentions?
Dolidze, Staropoli,
3 rounds.
Montlad, on Rosenstruik. Rosenstruik needs his own Burn Award, man.
Yeah. I don't know.
Sky.
Gone Rosenstruik.
Sky.
At least it was like, that was more like, Rory McDonald, Jake Ellenberger. Like,
yeah.
At least one guy was confidently winning the whole time.
Yeah. Like, Rosenstruik just, I literally mean he doesn't, this shouldn't be the award for worst fight, but Rosenstruik needs some kind of special award. For being just a fun suck.
Yeah, the Rosenstruik, Woodley, like it's just a type of guy who just will just refuse to make anything happen. And I just want to give a special shout out to Roman Dolidze, Laureano Staropoli. I'm sure everyone else has forgotten about this. I will never forget Roman Dolidze's face. His rictus grin haunts my dreams. And this was one of those fights where he just instantly wrestled at the start of every round. He got on Staropoli's back, and Roman Dolidze was like unwilling or unable to advance that position or present any threats from that with that approach. But also, Laureano Staropoli could not stop it happening. I don't think he attempted to fight the hands from the rear waist cinch once. He just did not know how to not get out grappled in this very, very basic way. So that sucked. It was a really, really bad fight.
Luckily, no one expected anything of it, and it has already disappeared from my brain.
Yep, as it should. All right, on to the next category. This one a little more fun. Although there's such a shoe-in. It's so
good.
So recent in our memories. Kind of had a hard time thinking of the other nominees, but there are a couple other honorable mentions. It's best bad fight, and it's Nunes Pena. That's it.
This is an all-timer. Like, I don't think much else stands out this year, I gotta be honest, it's not like, I think it was last year when we had the jumping, spinning back kick KO, and you were like, oh yeah, that is not just KO of the year, that is one of the all-time KOs in this sport. Didn't have like an all-timer fight, not really, but this is one of the best bad fights I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them.
Yeah.
Everything about it, like, the drama is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the way the game plan makes no sense. The commentary, just the sheer, like, mind-bending nature of it.
Yeah.
Just Pena just hitting her with a dip jab, and you're like, what are you doing, Juliana? She just keeps doing it. You slowly come to the realization, like, everyone slowly comes to the realization that she might be winning.
Yeah. You can't believe it. It's like, in retrospect, it's clearly happening way before, during your live experience, you realized it was happening.
Yeah. No, this is the thing, is that, like, the live team, like, Rogan is obviously, super hyping up anyone's successes against a dominant champion, as he always does.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just the fact that you're like, oh yeah, you're just kind of laughing along at him, and he's like, sure, like, come on, look at these punches, Joe. Look at these punches. What do you think is happening here? And then you're just like, wait, is Rogan right? And I'm wrong? Joe Rogan always been right?
That alone, right?
Have I always been wrong?
But
also the whole time you're also laughing. Like, it is a comedy experience unlike any other.
Yeah, it's the one exchange that really seals it for me is the one that I gifed and posted on Twitter, like, the day after it happened, where Nunes is like, just with a look of bafflement on her face, like, it steps in to jab with Pena, and Pena just slip jabs her, and Nunes runs face first into it. And then Nunes sort of seems to, like, blink and, like, shake her head clear for half a second. And then she's like, I know, I'll step in with another jab. And then she eats the slip jab again. And then she steps back and she seems to blink. And then she says, I know, I'll step in and jab. And it happens 4 times in like 4 seconds with just enough time between for you to know Nunes could have decided to do anything else.
She could have tried to put her hand through the space where she almost certainly had to know where Julia Pena's head was going to be.
But she just kept getting her jab slipped and not moving her own head. She didn't even bring her right hand up to block the jab that kept hitting her. She didn't do anything different. Astounding.
It's so good.
Astounding.
I mean, it's the stakes of it.
Yeah.
The fact that, like,
the odds going in.
His punches are so insanely ugly. You're just like, these can't be hurting. It's the mental damage of it more so than the actual, like, the physical nature of it. She just breaks her mind.
Yeah. She did.
Like,
yeah.
Do the jab, but then I'm the one who's getting hit.
Nunes, like all of us, just could not. It was like,
Pena looked absolutely shocked at the end of it.
that was great too. Pena was like, she was having PTSD from her own victory. She was just standing there, like, sort of blinking around, not happy. She had no idea what just happened. Incredible. Oh my God. All right. So honorable mentions. Nothing can come that close. But they have to be named. Ryan Superman Spawn versus Anthony Smith. This was short and sweet and utterly stupid. That's all there is to it. It's just like tons of the funniest looking knockdowns you've ever seen. Just like two dudes on little baby deer legs. It's ridiculous. And, it was a lot of fun to watch, and it was like 3 minutes long. So great. Volkov Tybura. This one I think could also go in worst fight. Kind of rides the line of being a good bad fight or just a bad fight. It was really ugly. And it was also like Alexander Volkov like looking really bad. Unexpectedly so. That was an element to it. And then this one I had to put in here just because we're going to mention the final moment that everyone remembers. But because that moment has caused everyone to forget how bad and ridiculously stupid the fight was up to that point, Huggy Bear Chris Barnett versus John Volante was a really classic bad heavyweight fight in a very entertaining way.
Yeah. Also, yeah, it's got many of the things you want. Ugly people. You just want, like, good physical comedy is something you want in your fights.
Yeah.
And then, like Sean Volante, like, really, with Batchko Head, just taking the idea that, like, it's coming towards the end of his career, and fuck it. He's just gonna get fat, and don't give a shit.
Yeah, that was
good. And then
too.
Huggy Bear also looking fat, but then wheel kicking him.
Very good. All right, Phil, the next category is yours.
Right, so this is another competitive one, and I'm really not sure who we're going to end up with here, but it is Laugh Out Loud Pure Entertainment Fighter of the Year. Again, this is a bit like, I feel like this is a bit like Fight of the Year this year, because there's some good stuff out there, but there's no one that's really, like, jumped out as being, like, consistently very funny.
Well, yeah, in fact, a lot of the usual laugh out loud pure entertainment fighters have kind of under-delivered this year.
Yeah. I mean, there's no real, like, great Kevin Holland performances.
Yeah.
Iwan Kutalaba, always very reliable. Has, just sort of had either good or bad fights. He hasn't really had good bad fights. So yeah, it's been a bit of a, really been like a super standout year for it. But with that said, to the nominees. Okay, Juliana Pena.
Yeah.
Obviously. Paulo Costa. I think that fight with Marvin Vittori came in real big.
Yeah.
Starting to lose his hair.
Yeah.
Like a man fighting like his demons and a midlife crisis and a block-headed Italian man all at the same time. Consistently very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Holland, he's always got to be on there. Not his greatest year, but be there. Gilbert Burns, for one very special reason. Derrick Brunson, surprisingly consistent. I feel like he's become a more amusing, he's just sort of leaned into the jokes a bit more this year, with the whole blonde Brunson thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just been entertaining him, watching him, crush nascent or damaged hype trains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of the laughs you get from Derrick Brunson aren't even because it's super funny. There's always an element of that with Derrick Brunson. Some of it are they're just feel good laughs.
I mean, he's Marcin Prachnio at a much higher level, where someone who's progressed beyond blind flailing into effectively focused and dangerous blind flailing.
Yes. I'm glad you said that.
Ryan Spann. I feel like this is a kind of body of work thing because I'm really appreciating how consistently silly Ryan Spann actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It really has. Because, as mentioned, like, it's possible for other, like, silly people to let us down. Like, Iwan Kutalaba,
Mm-hmm.
or, like, Devin Clark is a bit like Ryan Spann. Like, Spann really does, like, consistently give really, really silly fights.
Yeah.
All the time.
It's like, I don't know. What's the dumbest weapon to get killed by? Because I'm thinking it's live by the sword, die by the sword, but it's more like, you know, live by the stale baguette, die by the stale baguette. Like, there's a level of violence, which is exceeded only by like the stupidity of that violence every time.
And then obviously, rounding out is Huggy Bear.
Yeah.
He had one fight, but it was tremendous. Or did he only have one fight? I remember.
Did he also, because his UFC debut was against Ben Rothwell.
Oh god, they gave him like Rothwell, didn't they?
Yep.
I think that was this year, wasn't it?
Which in its own way was a laugh out loud pure entertainment thing, because you have like the biggest fat man versus the smallest fat man in the division.
Yep.
That's kind of fun. Though it wasn't a great fight.
So who are we thinking? In terms of singular moments, I have to say, Gilbert Burns dropping himself with a punch is the funniest thing I've seen this year.
And that was against Stephen Thompson, right?
Yeah.
There was that moment where he was so desperate to close the distance that he just falling over, swinging. He would not stop swinging because he knew the moment he stopped throwing, Stephen Thompson was going to plug him with a counter, and actually hitting himself in the face. That was pretty good.
Dropping himself. Like, Tyson Fury uppercutting himself in the face as, lived on, followed him throughout his career.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that is actually much less funny than the Gilbert Burns self-knockdown.
Yeah.
It's because, like, it's like all the best knockdowns. It's so unexpected. And he did it to himself.
Yeah, we know the punch.
We
know the punch you don't see coming is the one that hurts you.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be your own hand. That's
I just wish I could find it. What happened to it?
I know.
Someone, please, on Twitter, find what happened to the Burns knockdown gif, because it's just great. Like, it's his leg giving out after he's uppercutted himself in the jaw. It's the fact that he won all 3 rounds.
Well, you can't give Stephen Thompson points for that. You know?
You certainly can't.
Gilbert Burns fought so effectively, he whooped his own ass. Yeah, I think maybe it's just one moment is the thing. I guess so is Juliana Peña's. And she did already win one, but that was also a very hilarious singular moment. She has the added benefit of having achieved that result in the same year which she barely beat 2021 Sarah McMahon.
Sorry, I just found the Gilbert Burns thing.
Yes, let me see it. I
it's not. I found the GIF. I found it on Fight Pass.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's 8:30 in slow motion. It's him just swinging around his giant right hook, clocking himself in the center of his forehead, collapsing onto his knees, and then continuing to try and swing and throwing himself back on the floor again.
Oh. Hold on, I have to watch it. This is worth it for our live experience of the moment.
It's at about 8:30.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And then getting up and almost getting knocked out with a head kick. Really good. Yeah, that's a good singular moment. I think, I'd love to do Kevin Holland, but I think Kevin Holland has suffered for the return of crowds. He really had his moment in 2020 when there was just this unusual experience of having so many fights in a silent arena, and he was just talking the whole time. I almost feel like with the crowd noise back, he's talking less. Like he feels that he has less of a podium. And has also spent this year, betraying us and trying to get good. He's like trying to learn to wrestle and whatever. Although granted, he did get knocked out with an extremely violent clash of heads, which is sort of funny.
Yes. He did his best.
He tried. Is it Gilbert Burns for that one moment?
I mean, I think, yeah, I'm willing to give it to him because it's so funny.
It's the closest to like a Jared Brooks self KO that we've got.
Yes.
Which is still will probably go down as the laugh out loud pure entertainment moment of all time. Boy, I would like to watch that GIF right now. It's
that. It is that. Or it's Cody Garbrandt, like, being knocked out throwing right hands for the third consecutive time.
That too.
So I think those are the two goats because they're two very different kinds of humor.
Yeah.
Perfectly expressed.
Yeah.
This one was...
It still just falls short because it's not a real self-destruction, which seems to be the common element between those other two prior candidates.
Yeah.
It's merely a self-mutilation.
Man, imagine if he finished himself with that.
That would be an all-timer. There would be no question.
Absolutely.
That might be a lock for next year just because we would still be talking about it. All right, on to I think a favorite award of ours. But really, I don't know, not many picks that really jump to mind for this one. The Patrick Wyman Memorial Award for Explosive Muscularity. And, you suggested Santos Walker, which would be funny to like blame Pat for that fight.
Yeah. This is the thing is that often like potential nominees do seem to like recognize each other's explosive muscularity and decide to decline.
Yeah.
Say the other actual one is, and I was thinking about this, it is, I think Costa Vittori still does work. It still is explosive muscularity. It's just explosive muscularity in its sort of dawning twilight. Sort of Paulo Costa looking at the future of what lives beyond explosive muscularity.
Yeah. But also on like
this,
kind of on a sort of psychological plane, it's the most meathead fight.
Yeah.
Like both of those guys have extremely explosive brains, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So that's a good contender.
And it's the fact that he looks terrified and then he rediscovers his inner meathead as the fight goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually, that's a top contender.
Yeah. But I think it does have to be Chandler Gaethje.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing Dr. Pat likes, isn't it?
Let's look at Michael Chandler.
Yeah. It has to be Chandler Gaethje.
Explosive. Muscular.
Patrick Wyman.
Make a copy of it. Pop it into Pat's grave.
All right. On to the next award, I suppose. This one's you.
I feel like this one has to be you, though.
Well, okay.
Just because.
Well, we both did the
because
league.
it is your award.
Okay, but we both did the League of Extraordinary Journeymen together once upon a time, and we both appreciate permanent biological underdogs. So
that is very true.
Either way, it's let's just swap them because we don't have a clear pick. This is the Schlubby Schadenfreude Award for Best Normal Beats Athlete Performance, when athleticism is cheating and cheating doesn't pay.
Yep.
Top pick right here. This one's so good that I actually wrote an article about it. Gerald Meerschaert versus Mahmoud Muradov. Should I run through them all, or are we going to swap them?
No, second one. Wait a minute, what's his name?
Is it Alex Hernandez? Or is it,
it's Alex Hernandez, but Alex Hernandez.
No, it's not him. No, it's the guy who's such a schlubby journeyman that wasn't supposed to win that we've forgotten his first name. He's like Fluffy is his nickname, right?
Anthony Hernandez, yes. Anthony Hernandez.
Yes.
Rodolfo Vieira.
Yeah. That one should not have happened. Chris Curtis, Phil Hawes. Which is
Alex Caceres, Sung Woo Choi.
Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya.
And Jared Gordon and Danny Chavez.
Yeah. But Danny Chavez is like a guy who's like just athleticism. His game is really limited, but he has definitely won fights just being lightning fast and powerful. And Jared Gordon is notably normal. And that was a real like coming of age performance from him where he suddenly looked like Bilal Muhammad, his teammate. I also really enjoy, by the way, the lovely friendship between those two guys. MMA is a sport so defined by like idiotic grievances and prejudices. And Jared Gordon's out there like helping Bilal Muhammad celebrate Muslim holidays and stuff. And they're just like good buddies from, two different cultural backgrounds. It's nice. It makes me feel good. I'm sure they're both like idiots.
I've always loved MMA odd couple friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they both have like some terrible opinions or whatever. Everyone does, but that aspect of their friendship is genuinely very wholesome, and I like it.
Who are we gonna have win then?
Now,
I feel like there's two standouts. I think Blachowicz Adesanya is obviously the highest profile one, but I feel like it's somewhat it's a little difficult to like have that as like, ooh, physicality doesn't matter when you're like, oh, one of these guys is way bigger than the other one.
Yeah, and Blachowicz is very physically strong and was a bigger weight class and
so I mean I think the other big standout is Curtis Hawes because Hawes is so bricked up and clearly physically imposing. Also, Chris Curtis is quite dynamic and he doesn't really win in a kind of gritty journeyman kind of way. He just busts Hawes on one exchange. I think
his win over Brendan Allen is a way better gritty journeyman, like cleverness and technique kind of win.
Yes, but Brendan Allen is also not like a tremendous athlete.
No, exactly.
So I think it's really either Mirshat Muradov or Hernandez Vieira. And I think it's still got to be Mirshat, I think. Because Vieira is really just sort of kills himself.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. He's really an MMA novice still, and was like it's essentially a prospect loss.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Mahmoud Muradov came to the UFC a credentialed veteran elite athlete. And likewise, Gerald Meerschaert, a true veteran of underwhelming physicality. So sort of as a combination Schlubby Schadenfreude Award and Lifetime Achievement Award, I feel like we have to give it to GM3. Who once again, a rarity in this sport, gets bonus points for being, as far as I can tell, a delightful man.
A surprising commonality we seem to have in this award.
Mm-hmm.
Being athletic makes you a bad person.
That's right. We all know it. Now, Phil, I've forgotten why this award is here. You suggested getting rid of it, and I refused. Explain to me what it means, because
Well, I mean, remember when they just used to do these all the time? And so it seems like if the UFC's going to stop the tradition, we're going to keep it going with the Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira fight of the year.
And of course, there weren't any actual Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira fights of the year, as there weren't any last year when we also did this award. In fact, they stopped doing them quite a while ago. Nick Lentz had a fight. He lost to Movsar Evloev. Didn't feel particularly like a Charles Oliveira and Nick Lentz fight. Did either of Charles Oliveira's fights feel like a Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz fight of the year?
I'm going to say Oliveira Chandler is the closest thing we've had to an Oliveira Nick Lentz fight. Because it was him against a squat wrestle boxer He tried to guillotine him and it didn't work.
Yeah,
and he finished.
He also got pushed up against the cage and looked really scared and got hurt, which also famously happened a couple times against Nick Lentz.
Congratulations, Oliveira Chandler.
Now, well, I do want to say, just to spice the conversation up, Dustin Poirier also made some phenomenally suicidal grappling decisions, which tended to be what lost Nick Lentz his fights with Charles Oliveira. So there's still an element of that there, but is it specifically that Chandler went for a guillotine?
Yes,
and
that is it.
Dustin Poirier somehow
didn't go for a guillotine, yeah.
Avoided that temptation. Okay.
Like, I've got to not go for the stupid grappling choice.
Yeah. Well, just
I
go
should
for
do this barrel roll instead.
Yeah. All right. Now, Phil, as I had to read Slubby Schadenfreude, you must read the nominees for this next award.
Yes. Okay. This was the via @LimsMA from last year, who gave us the Phil McKenzie Award for Best Ritual Manslaughter of an Aging Fighter, aka the Old Bastard Had It Coming Award. And again, this one was surprisingly difficult to find because the old guys were doing kind of well this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to feel about that.
They didn't learn enough lessons for Phil.
They didn't learn the lessons, and the old bastards did have it coming. And people need glue. The glue factories need to keep going, and that's what we need old people for.
Yeah. If the UFC's not going to feed old people to young athletic prospects, what are the bookbinders going to do? What are the shoemakers going to do?
Exactly. There's an economy to think about here.
What are the people who love eating paste going to do? They're going to run out.
There was one man who did his best.
Yes.
To keep the glue factories in business. He presumably by donating his own bones, he went out there and got annihilated in the most crushing ways possible.
Yeah.
And, for that, I have to thank him. And it is obviously, it's Frankie Edgar.
Now, continue your point, but I have something to say.
Because, normally we give this award to a fight, where, some giant roided out muscle freak it's to fight against BJ Penn or something, and just splatters them into the through the fence. But Edgar had two fights. I think I might have picked him in both of them. He understood. He understood what he was there to do. Fill up the quotas, and he not only got destroyed in them, but he got absolutely obliterated in the most horrific way possible, and then proved necessity of these things by being well, I'm not retiring, I'm going to do this till I die.
Now here's the thing, okay? So the problem is that Frankie Edgar clearly still has it coming. And I think the sort of the Platonian ideal of this award, Phil, is that the old bastard learns his lesson. And Frankie Edgar has assured us all that he will not. He wants it to keep happening. So does that change it at all? Because he didn't just say...
It just means that they need to give him, more athletic people than Corey Sandhagen and Marlon Vera.
Yeah, he can go down to flyweight and be Davison Figueiredo's comeback fight.
That was what I suggested.
There you go.
He needs to go down to fly. He's clearly too small for bantamweight. He needs to go down to flyweight and fight Davison Figueiredo.
Yeah, or that's the fight where the UFC finally brings back Kyoji Horiguchi as a flyweight again, and it's something. It's got to be.
See?
Or I said if he continues at bantamweight. See, my suggestion was also that it should have a certain. They should become increasingly ignominious. So I think losing to Davison Figueiredo, you don't necessarily learn the lesson because you're yes, I went down a division and somehow I faced an even bigger guy than I've ever faced before. But that's an excuse baked in. So is this is a former champion. I suggested Frankie Edgar versus Raoni Barcelos next. If he's
so good, yes.
If he stays at bantamweight, because this is a guy who, despite his very best efforts, just does not get any shine from the UFC. but is also a murderously devastating athlete who would teach any person other than Frankie Edgar the lesson.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that Hani Barcelos is too good. Ideally, I feel like the platonic ideal, it should just be like the person you're fighting should just be a pure, just physical destroyer with like zero technique, just so that they're just like, oh my god, I physically can't compete as this like raging muscled up idiot, just like flash kicks their head.
A guy
off.
like some bantamweight equivalent of like Bruno Silva, that guy who knocked out Jordan Wright a couple weeks ago. He's like the jiu-jitsu guy who just does dumb punches.
Mm-hmm. And I think, we talked about the all-timers. I think the all-timer for this category is definitely like Yair Rodriguez, BJ Penn.
Oh,
like, what are you doing in this sport, BJ? Get out.
Oh my god.
Get out. It's this guy to show you the door, and he didn't listen.
Yeah.
But yeah, other nominations in this category were Alex Morono, Donald Cerrone. Again, like, brutal, but also it happened to Cerrone a bunch of times, and Alex Morono is by far, and no disrespect to him, the worst person Donald Cerrone's ever lost to.
Oh yeah.
And Volkov Overeem, again, like, hideous to watch, and Overeem did in fact retire afterwards, didn't he?
Well, now he's back on the horse meat, and he's like doing kickboxing again, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, hideous and like depressing in the sort of ways you'd want this award to be, but also like Volkov isn't much of an athlete.
He's really big though.
Is big. If it had been,
it also had
but that's the thing. Like Overeem's already had ones he needs from that one.
Yeah.
He's already had like Ganu and Blades.
Yeah, and also the heavyweights don't learn lessons, so it's almost a lost cause because they never go away. Andrei Arlovsky could have easily, if this award had existed in 2006, and he won this year. In fact, the next category he's going to get a mention. So I guess it has to be Frankie Edgar. I still maintain there's something wrong with the idea that, like, yes, he had it coming, but he does not learn the lesson. There's something sort of.
Then you do it until he does.
All right.
Damn it.
Okay. I can co-sign that, I guess. Also bonus points for just getting absolutely disrespected by Marlon Vera en route. That adds to the, that adds to the humiliation. I just want to point out once again, I know I mentioned this on the show before already, but, when does that ever stop me from repeating something? Where like the contrast between young Chito Vera, who had yet to sort of find his confidence, fought Brad Pickett in Brad Pickett's hometown, or at least in his home country. Is Brad Pickett from London?
I think he might be from just outside London, but no, I think he's definitely from around London.
Isn't everyone in the UK from around London? So.
Yes, Connor.
Chito, you are.
No, he is from London.
You are.
Yes, you are correct.
Admit it. So's Kyle. He's from sort of near London. Everyone I know who's English is from near London.
I'm from actual London.
Oh god. Even worse. So, Chito Vera fought Brad Pickett in his retirement fight in London and, lost, was very clearly en route to losing. It would have been such a feel-good moment for Brad Pickett. And then he had the audacity to just, head kick him in the third round. The English crowd, English crowds are, I think our two nations can stand hand in hand in this, Phil, are just famously awful. And they were booing, and Chito Vera won them over by saying how much he loved and respected Brad Pickett. The quote, and forgive me for doing a bit of an accent, but it's Brad Pickett's a fucking legend. And people loved it, man. It was he turned it back into a feel-good moment. And you had a crying Brad Pickett who was being consoled by the young man who had just beaten him. It could not have been much better than it turned out being. And then in New York, which is also Frankie Edgar's hometown, he obliterates Frankie Edgar. And then afterwards, just fuck that guy. Absolutely no mercy or sympathy for Frankie Edgar. So that was good. That added to the brutality of it.
Yep, no, I agree.
Okay, on to the feel-good version. This is for those of you who, unlike Phil, are moral people. The best old guy win. Because, of course, what we really want to see are people who should be past it overachieving. Right? That is good. And there is an obvious pick. The most obvious pick there has ever been for this category. And that is owner of Glover's Restaurant, Glover Teixeira, who is now the UFC light heavyweight champion at
the age of 67.
That is the exact joke number I was just going to throw out. Neither of us is original, but we do have a good chemistry. Yes, at the age of 67, crawled out of the retirement home, left his walker just outside the cage, and frankly, put on a great performance. Like, the crazy thing is, Glover Teixeira made it to this point, these last couple years, of just being very nearly murdered and somehow finding his way back to a come-from-behind finish victory. That has been, other than even the Nikita Krylov fight, he almost got submitted. And in this one, he really didn't have that much trouble. So, truly, an old guy win for the ages. What about our honorable mentions?
So all of these have some qualifiers, but there's obviously Dominic Cruz, especially like his win over Pedro Munoz.
It's the mileage more than the age, still incredibly impressive.
Clay Guida, with his win over God damn it,
Leo Santos. Come on, man.
Leo Santos, yes. Sorry. Jose Aldo over both Pedro Munoz and Rob Font.
True.
Andrei Arlovsky, just managing to do it whilst he's still, whilst he's also, he must be 100 in 5 years by this point.
An old man who should have learned his lesson over a decade ago and has won twice this year.
And Cub Swanson. Well, you just put in the Cub Swanson one. So who is that? Who we taking that win as?
I mean, first of all, Cub Swanson. I have always. He's got to be
the. I mean, is it for beating the ghost of Darren Elkins?
That was at least it was the most merciful win over Darren Elkins. I would like to somehow push his win over Daniel Pineda, which just happened in December of last year, into 2021, because that was really a good one over a fighter who had some momentum. I'm going to just go ahead and say that somehow the energy from that impressive come from behind old guy win travels into his win over Darren Elkins. But
let's forget about his loss to Giga Chikadze, because
that didn't happen.
No one likes Giga Chikadze.
Yeah, it didn't happen. And I'm going to give him extra points for being the only guy ever the only guy since Chad Mendez to just mercifully put Darren Elkins out of his misery. You know, he just got him out of there. Kudos for that. I wanted to see him win. I love Cub. He's been one of my favorite fighters really since I started watching the sport. But I didn't want to see him just brutalizing Darren Elkins, and certainly not brutalizing him en route to, say, getting tired and getting submitted or something awful like that. So that is a good one. And Aldo, I think Aldo over Munoz is the better win because it's so clean. It's one of the best showings of his entire career. And it was so good, I think, that we didn't really realize maybe how old Aldo really is until the win over Rob Font.
Yes.
Where he was just barely keeping up and just veteran savvy and raw athleticism, frankly, making the difference at key moments. And frankly, and some really good decision making. You know, he's he's amazing. But, yeah, and also credit to Dominic Cruz. Again, we talked about this very recently, but, that is an old guy who, like Jose Aldo, has adapted himself, whose game is different and functions differently than it did when he was a champion, and continues to work against elite competition. So that's really cool too. But he can't possibly be the pick because he sucks. Just like he's annoying. Congratulations, Glover. We love you.
Yes.
We love you.
Oh my god.
Go on. Next category, Phil. That's your cue.
All right. We move on to the worst KO of the year, and aka the dumbest, least aesthetically pleasing KO via @Kovitz.
Not Kovitz.
Twitter.
Yeah.
So, we have Giga Chikadze doing his stupid jumping punches and then something else happening against Edson Barboza.
Yeah.
We have William Knight hitting Fabio Cherant with a super ugly check hook. We have Cyril Gahn doing something to Derrick Lewis. I can barely even remember it.
I know.
Just punched him a whole bunch, and then Lewis collapsed and it looked rubbish. And then we have one of the Dowkhouses.
Chris, the big one, the cop one.
The big, whatever. If they're Diaz's or Frere's or Machida's or something, I'm going to make some effort into learning which one's which.
Yeah.
Dowkhouses?
No.
Do I have to learn which one they are?
No.
Good. Yeah, this one, this was the one where he just got outboxed and then he Duffy punched Abdurakhimov, and then Shamil spent the rest of the he didn't actually finish him with the Duffy punch, but he was clearly on super autopilot for the rest of the fight, and got finished in the next round. That is my personal pick because none of the others annoyed me as much as this one. Maybe Chikadze, but yeah, I think Dowkhouse, because I was just like, come on, bro, you're going to be a good boxer. At least just jumping at people with their fist. Barboza, traditionally has gotten beaten by people who just leap through the air at him with their fists
and
out.
Chikadze did make the very simple but still very correct adjustment of hey, just run at Edson Barboza. That's how you beat him.
Yeah. That was sort of the adjustment that Dowkhouse made as well, but
yeah, I suppose so. You're right.
Yeah, just ugly. I
have a soft spot in my heart, which is because of the COVID. But I also have a soft spot in my heart for William Knight over Fabio Cherant. It's a fight that everyone's probably forgotten. At the time,
yes.
Thank you, Phil. At the time, people, it was upsetting to me how much people were raving over it. This was, speaking of Duffy.
What are you talking about?
There were people who were excited about this KO. They were using it, whatever card this happened on, they were using it as a pivotal piece of evidence as to why this card was way overperforming expectations. And it sucked. It's not good to look at. It's speaking of Todd Duffy punches, that's the punch he wins with. A literal, leaning back, straight arm. It's sort of like the hook that, Ben Rothwell knocked out Brendan Schaub with, but that was actually a good KO that was very funny. This is not good to look at. And Fabio Cherant is running forward just chin first. It sucks. It is very aesthetically unpleasing. And I will give an honorable mention to Cyril Gahn over Derrick Lewis because Cyril Gahn is so incredibly impressive. What a great athlete. What a great technician. But as we said, when we had, we talked about this with Tumen, didn't we?
I think so, yeah.
It was a real asterisk fight. For heavyweight is the thing you can't forget. And nothing is more, that was impressive for heavyweight than him just turning immediately into a heavyweight once he has Derrick Lewis badly hurt and just finishing him with really awful punches. Derrick Lewis is covered up. He's swinging. He didn't hit Derrick Lewis's body. He didn't target anything. He wasn't choosing his shots. He was just walloping him with super athlete heavyweight punches. It did suck. You know, all the ways you can beat Derrick Lewis. I mean, you struck with him. Congratulations. You're smarter than every other heavyweight in the planet, but that's not good. So I don't know. I don't have a strong pick for this category. I really thought you would feel more strongly about Chikadze Barboza, to be honest. Just for personal resentment.
Yeah. I guess it's just that it's happened before, I guess.
Yeah, but so is, again, as you pointed out, so is the Abdurakhimov loss, and Barboza was doing better at bantamweight than at featherweight than Abdurakhimov was at heavyweight. He was that's like a meaningful win.
I guess so. Okay, let's give it to Chikadze. I'm always down for...
Congratulations, Giga.
Always down for shitting on him. Hooray.
All right. Another hotly contested category coming up next. This is Best Post-Fight Rationalization. And, well, maybe it shouldn't be hotly contested because there is really one that stands out in the mind. So much so that the rationalization has continued and morphed and, in an Akira-like fashion, turned into something hideous, and monstrous ever since. And this, by the way, is something that happened like months and months ago. The rationalization is still ongoing and getting worse. But the nominees are Marvin Vittori, who, now you put here Marvin Vittori should have beaten Israel Adesanya. I believe it's really that Marvin Vittori did beat Israel Adesanya, is what he thinks. So that's
talking about how like, Izzy had like gamed the judges.
He believes he did enough to win that fight. That is a really powerful, meat-headed rationalization. Next up is one that I barely remembered, but you did find a quote, to remind us of the context. Ryan Hall apparently claiming that he was inches away from KOing Ilia Topuria. And the quote, which I believe you said is from an interview on the MMA Hour. Is that right?
Oh, that's the one.
He says, I could have easily knocked him out with the first spinning kick. He got super lucky. He's got this like baby deer legs thing, blocking a spinning kick that hits him right in the jaw area. If I'd have been better or luckier and it came to his temple, that's good night. But the shots that he landed were frankly lucky.
What's my main takeaway from Topuria Hall?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and like Topuria really got away with that one.
He got away with it, yeah. Ryan Hall's just MMA process is so flawless. Okay, now next one, I think this is an interesting choice. This is a dark horse in this category for me. Yoel Romero and the 3-round fight with Phil Davis. Now here's my take, okay? Yoel Romero, he loses a fight to Phil Davis doing essentially nothing, right? He has some interesting moments. He does some interesting tactical things. He's Yoel Romero, so he's going to do something weird and sort of clever every fight. But really, he just does not do enough. And, while also not really like getting hit clean as much as I think the commentators and fans were thinking live, just loses on volume. Phil Davis just slaps him basically to a clear points victory. You cannot give that fight to Yoel. And then at the end of the fight, Yoel is sitting on the stool and he's like, huh? What? The fight's over? Aren't there another 2 rounds? Now, everyone at the time, Phil, they took Yoel at his word. And that is something you should never do. Because Yoel is a master deceiver. We know he's one of the greatest cheaters. This is a guy who like would pretend he didn't speak any English so that he could not understand that the referee was trying to tell him to get off the stool after Tim Kennedy rocked him in the second round of their fight. Even though, of course, you don't need to speak English to know that you're only ever allowed to sit on the stool for like 50 seconds, right? He's a brilliant cheater. And so I think on the fly, he decided the best way to play this off, the most believable Yoel Romero way to pull this deception off is to say, oops, the reason I did so bad is because I thought there were 2 more rounds. I don't think he actually believes it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. But also that makes it great.
It's brilliant. Honestly. It's another classic in the pantheon, the Hall of Fame of Yoel Romero, gamesmanship. But I do think the next one has to be the winner, right? It's Conor McGregor.
I mean,
he's gone insane.
For sheer volume.
Yeah.
It's definitely him. Like, sheer amount of ways this man has come to rationalize. Like, oh my god. Dustin Poirier only won the first fight because he wasn't boxing and then he kicked. Then McGregor only lost the second fight because he destroyed himself by kicking.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't Poirier, it was himself that did it. Also, if he hadn't done that, he would have come back and won the second round because that's what Conor McGregor's super good at.
He's,
like,
as we know,
every possible angle, no matter how completely mad, has been covered by this man.
And all of that rationalization happening amid things like, you know, sitting there with your foot hanging off and in that position, like threatening Dustin Poirier's wife and children who are right there. Like threatening their lives.
Yeah. It was a real visual for that fight. You know, them just walking out of the cage while he's just lying there broken and shrieking at them.
Yeah. I said at the time, it's some kind of metaphor, but I don't know what it is. And that's just sort of hand in hand with him retreating further into just an ever thicker shield of excuse after excuse after excuse. He has now become like John Jones on Twitter too, where he's just like all he does. I mean, he's been doing this for a while, but it's worse. Where like all he does is talk shit and delete tweets. He's become awful. He posted that video when Poirier was fighting, who was it? Who was it? Did you remember the video where he was stalking back and forth in front of his...
Oh, God. I thought that was Gaith G. Chandler.
Maybe. Who knows?
Something like that. I can't even remember.
Like, that is... I don't know. And he's also, by the way, spent this year, like, limping around and, like, beating DJs with his cane and shit. Something is broken other than the man's leg. And I mean his mind. So I think it has to be Conor McGregor. He's rationalized himself.
I kind of want to give it to the old Romero because it's
so clever.
Yeah, and it's like it's built on his previous.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, if anyone else did this, you'd just think they were lying. But then maybe Yoel is that insane.
Yeah, or you would just assume that it was true. But you can't trust Yoel. But you can also trust him to think something weird like this and just not know what's happening.
Because I think there's there's definitely an award waiting for McGregor, which is related to this one. But I think like for best post-fight rationalization,
it's
like,
so soon
Yoel
after
coming with I just thought it was 3 rounds. Sure,
it's so soon after the fight too. McGregor came up with his by the time of the post-fight interview, and he had to listen to Poirier's first. So he was formulating that whole time. Yoel was doing it on the stool.
It's just an instant counterpunch built behind years of experience.
Okay. All right, fine. Yoel deserves it more. He's a better guy. This also makes me think maybe he did say no for gay Jesus. You have to wonder with Yoel. Just a sly fox, that one. All right. A sly fox in the body of a wide ox. Next. Ow. This is that's your cue once again, Phil. Next category, a new addition to the Handies.
Okay. This was from @KickPunchP on Twitter. It is the Gokhan Saki Award for specialists losing in their phase. And once again, there is a shoo-in. And it's Adolfo Vieira getting submitted by Fluffy Hernandez.
Yeah, which again, I wrote here as a journeyman because it was such a loss that shouldn't have happened that I could not remember Fluffy Hernandez's name. That's a clear winner. What are our other nominees?
Israel Adesanya, who, as you have put it, can feint. But what do with feint? Being baffled by Jan Blachowicz. Aljamain Sterling getting out-wrestled and thrown on his head by Peter Yan. And Leonardo Santos getting subbed by the guy who always gets subbed.
Yeah. So it's a strong category, and it's always one of the more outrageous things that does persistently happen in MMA, but it has to be Rodolfo Vieira.
Yeah.
You should not be getting submitted, even if it's, it's a prospect loss like we said before, and so on and so on. Yeah. And then our last award, which comes to us from the frequent Twitter interlocutor. Boy, I'm using a lot of big words on this episode. The Bumblebee Shouldn't Be Able to Fly award for the fighter who makes a thing work even when it shouldn't. He says past winners would include Olenek, Scott Smith, Dan Henderson. For this year, there is only one nominee and therefore only one winner. And it's Chris Huggy Bear Barnett.
This man is the definition of the bumblebee who shouldn't be able to fly.
It's his whole thing. Is being a little rotund, short, tiny heavyweight, who just does wheel kicks. And this is frankly, I think the first time one has worked. So, congratulations, Chris. I know your nickname is Beast Boy now. That's lame. You're Huggy Bear to me forever. Congratulations all the same. You shouldn't be able to fly, but you taught us all how. Also, this is our last chance, I think, to mention that a big part of how great that moment against John Volante was John Volante being like a bloated mess, just like not caring anymore. So much so that it was his retirement fight in New York and he didn't seem that bothered to lose it. He was just over it already. But also, Chris Barnett's post-fight interview was delightful. Yeah, go on, Phil.
So the post-fight celebration.
Yeah. He gave all the shine to John Volante. He was super humble and generous on the mic. He had a lovely quote where he screamed, "My heel is on fire!" because he thought he broke his foot from knocking out John Volante's blockhead. It was just wonderful, and everyone loved it, and truly one of the best moments of the year. And that brings us to an end to the weird stuff category, indefinable as it was, and on to the sort of equally fuzzily defined strategy section. Where again, we sort of pretend that this is like an analysis show. It is about how to fight well and not just a complete jerk off. Phil, please read the first award of the strategy section.
But we start off with a good award and a real one, and we go to best game plan. So we have, we have there's an interesting one here.
This one's
Jessica Rose Clark out-wrestled Jocelyn Edwards. And I feel like, where did this come from, Connor?
Well, I believe you'll read
this wouldn't necessarily have jumped out to me.
No, it was famously boring to watch. In fact, I would say not famously boring. I think everyone forgot about it very shortly after it happened. Frankly, Jocelyn Edwards is a pretty limited fighter, so if you're gonna game plan against her, it's a pretty obvious way to go. But I believe if you read the subtitle there, it says, out-wrestles Jocelyn Edwards with my help. Yes, that is right. I am the sport killer. I scouted Jocelyn Edwards. So, if you hated that fight live, it's my fault.
Did indeed pick the correct game plan, Connor.
Yeah, it worked. Worked great.
Find this man to to give the game plans to your fighters that will bring them victory.
Yeah.
At Boxing Bush on Twitter.
That's right.
Okay, next nominee we have Bilal Remember the Game Plan Muhammad.
Beautiful.
Man who has destroyed 2 straight southpaws that were a combined 100 years old.
How does he do it?
And Alexander Volkanovski, whatever, doing something. Oh my god, he's so clever. Blah blah blah. And then Marvin Vittori, Paulo Costa. That's a certain level of kind of Marcin Prachnio kind of shine to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's when someone is like consistently meat-headed, when they have a smart and coherent performance, you've got to be like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, granted, it was still very, very meat-headed. I mean, like, one of the most amazing things about Marvin Vittori's performance against Paulo Costa was that he only succeeded because he was able to tank thousands of vicious body shots with no defense. And didn't slow down from them at all until the 5th round. But
yes,
if there were a category of fighters that you just kind of give up expecting them to get any better or change at all, Marvin Vittori's in there, right? He's consistent. He's maddeningly consistent, as we know from his fight with Israel Adesanya that he won. And yet, I was very impressed with his performance against Paulo Costa. He used his jab really well. He used it defensively, which I always love to see. He got to spend so much time pressuring in that fight because every time Paulo Costa wanted to come forward, he just ran into a southpaw jab. He didn't know how to defend. He defended and countered better than I've ever seen, and he also did more than his fair share of body punching. And lots of really high output pressure from a guy who can often be, again, sort of just too consistent for his own good. So I thought it was that's a good pick to me, honestly. I was very impressed with Marvin Vittori, and once again, if there's any element of most improved, that adds bonus points to the award, like Marcin Prachnio, I think.
Yeah.
Does Bilal
particularly, but it's how Cody Garbrandt's like meat-headed fights against TJ were particularly shocking following what looked like a very coherent and controlled fight against Dominic Cruz. Simultaneously, the other way around, Vittori did not have a particularly good idea of how to fight Israel Adesanya, but he had a very good idea of how to fight Paulo Costa.
Yeah. Yeah. I think meathead versus meathead is sort of his element, and he can actually sort of just be the smarter of two meatheads in that case. Does Bilal Muhammad, does he lose points for just copying Gilbert Burns' game plan and doing it with less comedy, albeit more competently?
Yes. He also loses points for doing them against people who are hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
I think the answer is that we have to give it to Marvin Vittori to prove that he is smarter than Alexander Volkanovski.
Okay, great.
And let's make that the title of the episode.
Marvin Vittori is smarter than Volkanovski, parentheses, 2021 Handies.
Yes.
All right. Next award then in the strategy section. This is the Hey That Worked award for shitty game plans that triumphed regardless, aka the Himbo award. Sometimes it isn't all about game planning, folks. Sometimes random shit happens in MMA. Sometimes you can be a freak athlete and things just work out in your favor. And it is Pena Nunez.
It really is.
Once again. Now, is it a shitty game plan?
Yes.
It worked so well. It's kind of like, and if we, people.
Do you think they scouted?
Well, okay, fair enough. I doubt she really had a game plan beyond make it a tough fight. But in hindsight, looking at it, it kind of would have always worked. It was the right approach. And listeners of the show, as did your two hosts, really enjoyed having Schwan Humes on a couple weeks back. And, Schwan called this win the way it happened. And he is I think a much better, fight camp scouter than me and frequently calls upsets. And, he didn't call this one like for fun. He was like, if Pena can survive the first round, she's going to get in Nunez's face and make her super uncomfortable and make her tired and beat her up. And that is what happened.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if anyone was just like, oh yeah, Pena should just do the whole fight standing up. Just beat Nunez down in a stand-up fight and then submit her when she's tired.
Yeah.
Like, just Diaz Lawler her kind of thing.
It's
her
true.
deadly stand-up. Because, yeah, you know, we talked about it beforehand. There was an argument for, like, Pena to be classic Juliana Pena and just charge Nunez and clench up with her and tire her out.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of do the like, running up to her and just out-jabbing her?
But look at the
It
results.
was. It was hilariously funny, but...
All right, fine.
Like, I don't know if anyone called that specific, specific approach, because it seemed absolutely insane.
I think I'm going to back off and say that, yes, it is still the top pick and the shoe-in for this award, simply because Juliana Pena's own reaction was, hey, that worked. That, I think, clinches it. She did not expect it to work. She was lying to herself the whole time and then realized that somehow she had convinced everyone, including the so-called women's MMA GOAT. So, all right, fair enough. Other nominees in that category, Anders, Stewart 2. Eric Anders, who will be mentioned later, absolutely dominated Darren Stewart in their first fight and then threw it all away. And then he came into the second fight looking like he had no idea, like as if the only way to avoid such a catastrophic brain fart this time around would be to not dominate the fight. So that sucked. He still won. And Derrick Lewis knocking out Curtis Blades. I think this is a strong nominee, even if it's not going to win, simply because if your game plan is I have one punch that is going to knock you out, it's a real like street self-defense kind of way of thinking, right? Like a takedown won't work on me because I'll elbow you in the back of the head or I'll bite your testicles or something. It's that level of strategizing. And also it shouldn't have worked because Curtis Blades did not have to go for the takedown because he was absolutely dicing Derrick Lewis up on the feet before that. So, strong nominee. Derrick, I think any other year you probably would have won, but Juliana Pena herself knows that it shouldn't have worked, and it did. Phil, next category, another pick'em.
Yeah, this is a tough one. So this is the Strategy is for Losers award for game plans that didn't work. Zhongwei Lee strategizes her way onto the wrong end of the first ever Rose Namajunas comeback. Rob Font largely outfights Jose Aldo and loses because he can't bust a grape. And then Michael Chandler in his fights with both Gaethje and Charles Oliveira.
Mm-hmm.
I think, he's my pick, I think.
Yeah.
Because he is the most sort of volatile of the sort of top 5-ish UFC lightweights. And if you look at, I think he's the one where like his win condition sort of has to be that he gets them out of there early at this point.
Uh-huh.
I don't really necessarily trust his body to hold up. And I think he really like maximized his ability to be able to get both of those guys out of there. Like he clearly had like a lot of game plans prepared for like Gaethje, for example. He had the body kicks, he had the low kicking with him, like the working around the guard. Against Oliveira, he was he had a guillotine prepared, which he never really had before, but he'd also trained all his defenses for the ground. But like mostly just like it was the body head change ups.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'd clearly specifically game planned for these guys, and in ways which like worked really well for one round.
Yeah. In a way, the best kind of strategy, the most satisfying strategy when it really works out is a gambit. And Michael Chandler is a human gambit. Like, so him leaning into that does feel pretty good. It's kind of the best possible strategy he could have had for both of those fights. I do agree. Zhongwei Lee is an interesting one because I've now come to see her as a fighter who is really handcuffed by whatever strategy she brings into a fight. I think that performance, she now looks like one of those, this is a pretty common thing, but one of those sort of rote fighters who she comes in really well prepared, does great preparation but can't get off that track, can't adjust, which to me means she loses, because a really important part of a successful strategy is the ability to adjust, which frankly, Michael Chandler did better, against Justin Gaethje, of adjusting to his gambit's failure than Zhongwei Lee did to, I mean, the fact that you can't call it a great game plan when she spent so much of the 5th round on her back doing nothing. You know, that's not good strategy. Rob Font, you know, also should Corey Sandhagen?
That is a great shout.
Should Corey Sandhagen be in this category as well? And yeah, Rob Font, like, that's a real strategy for losers type of pick there, because Rob Font is supposed to be a guy who can scare people off with both his reach and his punching power. And instead he just looked like a feather-fisted technician against Jose Aldo, who just kept getting blown up by single punches. So I don't know. If we decide that we have to agree and make a pick, Michael Chandler deserves some credit for making the most of this probably final stage of his career. But, yeah, there's a couple of other interesting contenders there.
Yeah, I think it's that Rob Font one. It's very tragic. As I said, it's one of those ones where, like, if just switched the bodies of those guys, and Aldo had been like the one lighting on up with jabs the whole time and winning on volume and then getting cracked by a singular punch.
Yeah.
People would be crying to this day.
I'd be crying right now
about how unfair it was.
Yeah. There's a tear welling in my eye as you describe that fight. Does Corey Sandhagen deserve an honorable mention for just not being able to keep up with Petr Yan, despite having, I think, a really intelligent approach to that fight?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, and he cleaned up a lot of the things we thought might be, might be easy routes in for Yan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't spin or give up his back.
Mm-hmm.
Fought like a really smart, coherent fight, and it just wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next category is yours. I think it's really the star award of the Handies every year. Our favorite, I think, but
I think this is yours, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, because I did strategies for the losers.
Okay. It's the worst brain thinking in a fight award. You know, MMA is...
This was a good year.
It really was. As much as we didn't have any clear contenders for like best fight, or there was one that kind of snuck in at the end. This one had a front runner all year long. There is a shoe-in pick. We have been hinting at it, not subtly, since it happened. And yet, the competition has been heated. People have been trying, even down to the very week after the winner pulled off the greatest brain fart in MMA history. Somebody did almost the exact same thing, trying to vie for the crown. The winner is obviously Petr Yan, who would right now be bantamweight champion if he had not. Probably
fighter of the year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He whatever, you know, these are utterly meaningless honors and everything, but he would have cinched many of them if he had just kept doing what he was doing, against Aljamain Sterling. And, just to briefly recap it, because we've done it so many times already, he was owning Aljamain Sterling in his phase. He was owning Aljamain Sterling in Aljo's phase. And he had him losing to such a point of desperation that Sterling was just falling over again and again, being thrown to the ground, being knocked off balance. He has him on his knees, sort of in a double collar tie, one man standing, one man very clearly down. He pauses. Aljamain Sterling is so beaten at this point. It's like a pro wrestling,
it really is, yeah.
Where like
the whole rhythm of it.
Yeah. Aljo like is sitting there doing what you're not supposed to be doing in any kind of live fighting scenario, waiting for Petr Yan to make what everyone assumes will be a good decision. Petr Yan has enough time to consult with his corner mid-fight, gets their approval, agrees, and hits Aljamain Sterling with a knee that loses him the title. Nothing can compete with that, really.
The only thing that would have made it better would have been if he lost to Sandhagen.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Sandhagen was, like, obviously a more troubling matchup than Aljo was.
If he'd
somehow managed to, like, foul his way into fighting his toughest matchup and then lost it, that would have been tremendous.
That really, yeah. If he had just gone off the rails and never gotten back, that would have really been an all-time worst brain-thinking moment. As it stands, it still is. I mean, one of the most catastrophic unforced errors I've ever seen.
I mean, the advantage is that at least, like, everyone still sort of pretty much thinks of him as the title holder now.
Yeah, yeah.
When people say, you know, what about XYZ fighter? They always say, like, how is he going to match up against Jan? They never say, like, how is he going to match up against Sterling?
No. Sterling, I mean, it somehow was like such an unbelievable error that everyone is still to this day is blaming Aljo for it. They can't fathom how Petr Yan could have made such a bad decision, that somehow it's Aljo's fault for being incapacitated. Which is astounding.
This is how people have always been. The famous example of this was, Varna Cerrone. Cerrone kneed Varna in the head, broke his orbital, and then, the narrative for, years afterwards was how Varna had been faking it.
Yeah. Maybe Anthony Smith was really smarter than we all gave him credit for in continuing after John Jones illegally kneed him. Because, looking at what Aljo has gone through online, it would have, I guess, ruined his life to have won the title in that way, even though it would have been one of the funniest things that's ever happened in this sport. All right. The other nominees, I'm going to run through them and then we can discuss, because they are, despite the shoo-in, they're worth discussing. Jeff Neal versus Neil Magny. Clinch. Cynthia Calvillo outboxes Jessica Andrade. Leon Edwards gets obliterated by Nate Diaz. Dustin Poirier, barrel roll. Kyung Ho Kong must grapple Hani Yaya. And Darren Stewart twofer, the Eric Anders twofer, both versus Darren Stewart. Illegal knee, same situation the week after Petr Yan's. And then...
So, it has to be said, he made fun of Petr Yan online for doing that, and then went out and did it himself. This is, I think, it's one of the only ones that makes me tempted to beat out Petr Yan's one. It's only because the stakes were so comparatively low.
Yeah.
And he just got to run it back immediately and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But still, being like, haha, you idiot, why would you illegally knee someone and then just go out and do it a week after?
He does get a few bonus points for having one of those blockheaded overcorrections in the rematch as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing can beat Petr Yan. It's just the stakes were too high. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's it for that. Last category, Phil, you have the honors.
I don't think it is the last category. We got a couple more. I think maybe we do them. I think we should do this last category last because it's the most heavy hands category. It is a new one, right?
Yes, I just added it, and it is. Yeah. It does really seem to fit the sort of the tone of this show.
Do like this next one though because it was actually like a really hotly contested category. The more we thought about it, best weight miss. So Betch Correia misses weight in her retirement fight. Justin Taffer becomes the first heavyweight to ever miss weight. Rafael Alves gets a fight cancelled for coming in well over one weight class above where he was.
11.5 pounds overweight.
Which is, in fact, we believe is the UFC record.
Yeah.
And then Paulo Costa... with his sort of midlife crisis weight miss against Marvin Vittori.
There's a lot of X factors that add to many of these.
Yeah. I mean, like bad salmon.
Right. Go on.
Jesus.
Do you want to read?
So, I mean, there's a lot of great ones, but I think the more you think about it, the more the Rafael Alves one jumps out. A, it's a world record, but B, the absolutely phenomenal excuse making. It was apparently bad salmon that caused him to come in at 156.5 kilos or whatever it was.
Yeah, he claims to have gotten food sickness, and then therefore he had 4.5 pounds to go, and then just had to drink tons and tons of water. I guess his doctor told him to. But then I'll let you read it.
I mean, this could also go into the best rationalizations, but still.
That's true.
Said, thanks to the bad salmon, he said, I know a lot of people is criticizing me, but I don't care. Jesus was God's son, and he was criticized despite all his power. So imagine me, a flawed man on earth. And that's it. That's the...
I don't know what it means. This is the thing. I don't know. The rationalizations kind of have to be rational in some way. I don't really know how.
I just love the open-ended nature of it.
Yes.
Imagine me, a flawed man on earth.
Yeah.
You could use that explanation for anything, and it would still work.
Yeah. I'm facing a lot of criticism, but Jesus was criticized.
Yeah. You've cheated on your wife? Just be like, I know you're criticizing me. Jesus was God's son, and he was criticized despite all his power. So imagine me, a flawed man on earth, and then just run away.
He is also, this is a classic MMA weight miss, because according to the article in which we found that quote, his walk-around weight is 195 pounds. And the division he missed weight for is 145.
Literally 50 pounds.
Unbelievable. And it was such a dramatic weight miss, it prompted him to now say he will fight as a lightweight in future, which, by the way, is a weight class for which he also missed the limit.
Yes.
So, we may have a future Anthony Rumble Johnson on our hands here.
Yeah. I mean, your walk-around weight being entire third higher than your regular weight it's not right.
It's not.
Than your fight weight.
It's not. It's wrong. Now, there is still something to add to these other nominees, right? Bethe Correia, that's just the perfect way for Bethe Correia to retire. She overachieved so much.
Yep. And
she really, really deserved, especially when they matched her against Carol Hosa, she really deserved to stop caring at long last. So big kudos to her for that. Justin Tafa's, which was just a couple weeks ago, that was another record in the UFC. The first UFC heavyweight ever to miss the 265-pound limit. I think we should get rid of the 265-pound limit. I'll just say that right now.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
Why would there be a weight limit in the first place? It's heavyweight. There shouldn't be one. Just have it be 205 and up. That's heavyweight. And Paulo Costa and Marvin Vittori was a particularly funny one because Costa was so unrepentant. He
had a bicep tear, which I believe stopped him from presumably running.
Okay. Okay. He was unrepentant. It almost caused the main event of what I recall to be a somewhat top-heavy card to be canceled. That was a big moment of drama that week. So that was certainly higher stakes and more meaningful than, Rafael Alves, missing weight. But I think Rafael Alves gets it because it's such a catastrophic weight miss and ill-advised to begin with, and the excuse making, my God.
Good.
All right. Next up, the Spike Carlyle Award for Worst Vibe of the Year. By the way, Spike Carlyle, not in the UFC anymore, but he did have a hey, that worked win this year as well, pretty recently. where he
does seem like the kind of win that Spike Carlisle would get.
Yep, just getting absolutely drubbed and came back and got a submission. So kudos to you, Spike Carlisle, and your terrible vibe. Our nominees for this pick'em category: Conor McGregor, Roman Dolidze. I hate him. I hate his face. Giga Chikadze. Phil, you hate him. You hate his face. Sean Strickland. Sean O'Malley.
I know you love him. He's one of your racist, insane boys.
Yeah, I won't let go.
We have to put him here. He's really come to
he's awful. I can acknowledge that. I won't let him go, but he's awful. Sean O'Malley and Cody Durden, a sort of dark horse for this category for how precipitous his rise and fall were within moments of his best moment in the UFC. So what do you think? Which one do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, it has to be Conor McGregor, right?
Yeah.
Spent so long talking about him in the rationalization section. He's just like, he's a vile person now. He's just, all the charm has left him.
Yeah.
He's just a shrieking, hideous mess.
He's always been a mixed personality at best. Right, where he will really, really toe the line whenever possible. But he has gone into like reclusive supervillain mode since the 2 losses to Dustin Poirier. And he keeps beating up random civilians in clubs. He's just going around just finding innocent people and like telling them that like, how dare they question how great he is, and then attacking them. And we don't even have to mention like, the other, like, I believe still alleged, terrible crimes that Conor McGregor may or may not have committed. He's terrible. He really is.
Yeah. I mean, for just pure vibe, it still kind of feels like it should be Sean O'Malley. Like, cause he's someone where I don't think he's actually done anything that bad this year.
No.
It's just like when he talks, you're just like, ugh.
I think he was like friends with a pedophile or something. I can't substantiate that claim. There was some, who knows? It's an internet thing. Who knows how credible that is? But, yeah, he just kind of, the thing that cemented it for me, I think this was last year, was when he was, gearing up for the fight with Cheeto. And like, we had the pre-fight packages, and Cheeto was like, Cheeto is also, I think, by the end of his career will achieve supervillain bad vibe status. And I will also refuse to let him go. I think he's probably like a weird toxic person, but he has his inspirational elements to his story, unquestionably. He's talking about his, having come up from nothing and being driven by this hunger to escape poverty, and, had not too long before that, like, managed to afford that life-changing surgery for his daughter and her rare medical condition. All that is so interesting and humanizing. And then we cut to Sean O'Malley, and he's like, yeah, ever since I was 13, I wanted to be really famous. And that was it. He's like the TikTok generation fighter.
Yeah, that's true.
It does suck. Special mention for Roman Dolidze. I personally hate him. He is my, you formerly had Josh Emmett. You've forgiven him for no apparent reason and moved on to Giga Chikadze. Who Dan Tom, wonderful guy and great analyst, agrees with you that he also hates Giga Chikadze for inexplicable reasons. Roman Dolidze just has a face that I just can't imagine a mother loving that face. He's got he's the real like heir to Spike Carlisle, where I can't even really put my thumb on it. It wasn't the comments that Spike Carlisle made. It was just a vibe. And for Roman Dolidze,
because we've learned over the years that you don't really mind what people say about him.
Well, with Spike Carlisle, it is now more than a vibe. He has some really insane and offensive beliefs, but Roman Dolidze is, I know nothing about him personally, purely on vibe. I do not like him.
Enough. He does look a lot like, what's his face? Mike Perry's racist mate.
Ooh, like Alex Nicholson, yeah. He kind of looks like Alex Nicholson's dad.
I will say, like, going back to the Sean O'Malley thing, one of the most relevant things from someone saying is that, like, when O'Malley was saying that he wants to fight Peter Yan or whoever it was, think it was two men on Twitter who said that O'Malley Yarn would be an easy win for O'Malley, because Yarn would get disqualified because O'Malley's body odor would disgust him so much that Yarn would resort to cheating blatantly again by shooting him in the chest multiple times with a gun.
Yeah, that's pretty good. We haven't really mentioned Cody Durden. He hasn't had enough tenure to defeat Conor McGregor, but he did have a really terrible moment. He had a great fight against Aoriqi Lang, which was really very close. I thought Cody Durden won it. I didn't think it was close enough that I thought Aoriqi Lang won, and he won it in a way that I like, which makes he earns special resentment for me for me praising him just before he revealed what a dickhead he was. And then immediately after, he gets on the mic and he says that he had to beat Aoriqi Lang to send him back to China. And then immediately people went through his Twitter and dragged up all kinds of horrible, heinous things that he said. Here's the clincher though. After this, Cody Durden was being bombarded online with hatred for his terrible remarks. This was his follow-up tweet to quote unquote explain the things that he said about his opponent, who, by the way, you just had a great fight with this guy. It was a very courageous performance from him, and that's how you're going to talk about him? That didn't humanize him at all in your eyes? Isn't that a thing that's supposed to happen between fighters? You have a war, and then you're like, wow, we're friends now? He went completely the opposite direction, insulted him and his country, and then said, listen, the guy was disrespectful and wouldn't shake my hand at the weigh-ins. After beating him, I simply meant he could go home, wherever that may have been. I apologize if I offended anyone. That certainly was not my intention. I love you all. See you at the top. Which is a classic asshole non-apology.
Yeah. The classic apology. Apologies if I offended
If
anyone.
I offended you, it's actually your fault for being offended. I wasn't trying to offend you. And also, I meant he could go home, wherever that may have been.
So this is the fastest, Conor becomes a fan of a fighter thanks to a gritty performance, and it turns out that they're a horrible anti-Chinese racist, pipeline that we've ever seen. It happened within, minutes.
Yeah. This is like Milkshake Duck slapped the milkshake into my face as I was sending the picture to Twitter about how cute the duck was. I had to reply in the same thread. Actually, sorry guys, the Milkshake Duck is an asshole. Truly incredible. But still, it's Conor McGregor. He's awful. He's terrible. All right, Phil, you do the honors. Last category, our newest addition to the Handies.
Okay, the most improved, and I think the other way of saying this would be the most technical fighter.
And listeners of the show know what we mean by that.
And I think there is a shoe in this year, although there are a lot of strong candidates.
Yes.
Technical fighter this year is, of course, Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker goes full SBG. Really the classic kind of capital T technical turn, because he was previously a fighter with no technique. Who won with raw insanity and power. And so of course, as with Alex Hernandez, who was more technical than that, but then, was still pretty much just raw athleticism. When those guys try to learn technique, it often happens that they just stop knowing how to fight. And no one did that.
It is super weird.
Mm-hmm.
SBG, does tend to, coach these big movement heavy game plans into their fighters, but never seems to coach, a strike to them whilst they're doing it. Aside from, wheel kicks.
That is interesting.
At least, because it's sort of similar to, the old Winklejohn thing, but at least Winklejohn fighters have like some recognizably like effective kicks and stuff they throw. Generally tend to be pretty good at like body kick and head kick change ups.
And they certainly seem to develop like toughness and stick-to-itiveness in the gym because you just have to keep the leaf blower going.
But like, that fight was strongly reminiscent of like some of the worst performances of like Cathal Pendred's career.
Yeah.
If you're taking like both Cathal Pendred and Johnny Walker, and like they're going into your process and they're coming out as the same terrible fighters. Yes. Something has gone very badly wrong.
Something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. Credit to John Kavanaugh for being the coach who famously believes that if there's any one thing you should teach a young fighter, it's not to throw 1-2, because it's the combination that statistically most often results in a KO, in a counter.
Oh my God.
The man understands statistics, Phil. Other nominees, please.
So we have Colby Covington learns calf kick. I mean, that was, I think, him trying to be technical for the first 2 rounds of the Usman fight before forgetting it was one for the ages. He
can't beat Johnny Walker because he did unlearn it.
Yeah. He was at least like, oh, I remember what I have to do. I have to just charge this guy.
Yeah.
Cody Garbrandt develops footwork and PTSD. This is a very good shout out. Also, really, Cody should be in there for game plans, which... No, sorry, the fight against Asensau was 2019, wasn't it? Sorry, 2020. It wasn't 2021.
If we didn't have that last year, it clearly should have been a contender for, hey, that worked.
Yeah, that was definite, hey, that worked. Yeah, like, obviously, he's completely fallen apart. Davison Figueiredo defying his genetics against Brandon Moreno in their rematch. Again, he talked before the rematch about how he wanted to be like Kamaru Usman and be more technical.
And somehow seemed to lose his chin as a result of it. He lost everything in trying to become technical. That was a real fall from grace.
Yep. And Conor McGregor also learning how to low kick and
LOL.
And causing himself to disintegrate even faster than normal.
I think that one's especially funny because, as we sort of jokingly predicted, it was the same single adaptation he made that allowed him to barely beat Nate Diaz in their rematch. So he apparently has just one move he can tack on if needs be. And it destroyed him. So.
Yeah, I mean, this was like the most improved and most technical is actually a pretty good category this year as well.
Yeah.
I think Johnny Walker. Cody Garbrandt, I think he'd already been doing it a bit, and his slide has been so pronounced that it was just such a like sudden impressively technical performance from Johnny Walker that you just have to give it to him.
Yeah, it's like the other one, like Davison Figueiredo really should be a runner in there because there's such a gap between those two fights, which didn't happen that far apart at all. But at least Brandon Moreno was in there, like making it a problem.
Brandon Moreno, we should have given him a shout out for best game plans because
absolutely
he really did everything right and Figueiredo did everything wrong.
Yeah. But you know, Johnny Walker, he was in there with an equally timid Thiago Santos. And he still persisted in being capital T technical. So that's it, folks. Those are all, nearly 2.5 hours of the 2021 Handies. And, I want to thank you all for what has been a wonderful and traumatic year in MMA. I think, going forward in 2022, Phil, as long as civilization stands, I think we will continue our mission to expand beyond just watching and covering all the UFC events, if only for the sake of our own mental health. We got to watch Superbon more, you know, fighting some guy that we've never heard of. We got to watch some Bellator on mute.
Absolutely.
We've, maybe Emily Dakota did cool stuff. Maybe the cool women's MMA stuff is actually just not happening in the UFC. We'll watch some Invicta. We'll watch some more boxing, broaden our horizons. It was, in fact, quite a good year for boxing after a really downer 2020.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were some really tremendous upsets. There were some great fights. Alexander Usyk became a mostly unified heavyweight champion, setting up a fight with Tyson Fury, which will hopefully happen this next year. Tyson Fury said he wants it. That's never been a barrier to fights not happening in boxing, but still.
Didn't Tyson Fury put out a thing where he was like, here's my next 5 fights that I would like, and it was like, Wilder rematch.
Again.
Like, there was notably no Usyk in there.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe he's waffled.
Oh yeah, I'm not interested in this guy because he's too small. Yes, I'm sure that is it.
But he still wants to fight Anthony Joshua.
Oh yeah, that was one of them, obviously.
Who lost to the guy who's too small. Mm-hmm. All right, fine. But there's lots of other combat sports stuff happening out there. I think that'll be our mission in 2022, Phil, is trying to expand and not just be slaves to the relentless UFC schedule. A thing we've not, hesitated to complain about time and time again. I think it's time we do something about it. God damn it.
Great. I think we have been expanding a bit more this year. We just need to keep doing it. Yeah,
keep doing it. Grow like a cancer into the other combat sports until we've ruined them, just as we have personally ruined the UFC and the sport of MMA. Thank you to all of the people online who submitted category and fighter nominations, ideas. Please, get at us. If you have, any things that we notably missed, I am quite sure there are some, really obvious blind spots, as is always the case. And, why not? Throw category ideas at us, for next year. Use that hashtag. It'll make them easier to find down the road, if I remember. Find us on social media at Evil Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush, BUSCH. That's me. And, I don't know, maybe I'll even, since I'm in quarantine mode, maybe I'll try to squeak out another boxing fight commentary or something on the Patreon, just before the year ends. And if you're not already subscribed to that, we try our very best to do at least 2 bonus episodes a month. It's just $3 a month. And, we really appreciate your support. I think this has actually been a really good year for the Patreon too. So, a hearty thanks to all of the new subscribers that have jumped on there and supported the show. Hope you've enjoyed the bonus content. And, I hope you've enjoyed that I have now become the kind of person who unironically uses the word content.
Hooray!
All right. Why have I been talking about next year, by the way? Because this is it for me. I forgot.
Oh, it's a good point. Yeah, I will be doing all of these things. I will be expanding into more coverage with Ed Gallo or Rian Wagner, depending on how keen I'm feeling at the time.
Could bring Zane in. You guys love talking shit about me. Could bring Kyle in. Really, the options are limitless.
Oh yeah.
You and Kyle would have a great sort of odd couple class difference kind of thing,
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking of is we're just going to be starting the new year off with just a series of episodes just called Conor's Worst Takes.
That would be good.
Just go back and look at them and just tear them to pieces.
Yeah. Heavy Hands Berries. It's a long-standing host, now hosted by Phil and Kyle, a.k.a. the Baronet and the Street Urchin. Is that good? Okay. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you all had a great Christmas or whatever holiday you choose to celebrate. We will talk to you next year. If you came here today, I meant to do it differently. If you
came here this year?
Yes.
Minor point of face punching? You came to the right place? This has been The Hands.
Great. It would have been good if I'd let you do that clean, but I kept trying to tell you to do it as you were doing it.
I'm sure I'll have more time to get it right.